Gachiakuta. It's about a lot of things, but no matter how complicated the story might get, it can ultimately be dumbed down into a show about trash. Despite the fact that it's about literal garbage, I enjoyed it. So much so that I finished all of it in one weekend. So this is my summary of the greatest trash show ever made. Starting off is this mysterious guy who is stealing some garbage, and as it turns out, that's a crime punishable by death. So, when he gets caught, they summon almost every single security guard they have to open fire on this random guy who is just stealing their garbage. As he's getting away, all of the apostles start shooting at him. And surprise surprise, not a single bullet actually hits him. Like, there's this segment where he's running in a straight line, and still none of them hit. I mean, there's this one bullet that grazes his arm, but their aim is so bad, you'd think he has plot armor. Like, who is he, the main character? Anyways, he makes it out alright with this plush in tow and heads back. The left side is the beautiful clean city that all the entitled rich people live in, while the right side is basically just a big slum that poor people called tribesfolk live in. Speaking of tribesfolk, here's two of them. Rudo, the trash raider from earlier, and Chiwa, a friend of Rudo's. Chiwa's really concerned about Rudo. We've seen that there are indeed consequences to stealing trash, and Chiwa just doesn't understand why it's worth the risk. Rudo doesn't really have a good explanation, but he does explain that all of the garbage these rich people throw out isn't really garbage at all. Most of the time, the stuff they throw out is still usable, at least in Rudo's eyes. He repairs and sells some of this garbage both for money and because he has a passion for repurposing trash. It may seem odd, but it's pretty understandable, especially in this setting. Plus, he's not really hurting anyone doing this, and yet, there's plenty of people who actually find him weird for all this. In fact, they just hate him in general. And there's actually a couple of reasons for why this is. First off, they think his obsession with trash is pretty weird, and it's to be expected, but another reason they don't like him is actually because of his gloves. Rudo wears these old beat-up gloves all the time, and apparently he never takes them off, which the other people think is creepy. In addition, according to all the rich people, the tribesfolk are the descendants of criminals who are sentenced to live here as a punishment. The whole reason there's a divide is to keep out the supposed criminals and their descendants, even though their descendants, aka the tribesfolk, haven't really done anything wrong. For a while, they've been on their best behavior to try to be accepted back into society. However, some time ago, Rudo's father went on a huge psychotic murder spree. Obviously, this ruined the reputation of other tribesfolk, and now Rudo's being blamed for it. Despite all this, Chiwa still got Rudo's back. She reassures him that he's nothing like his father, and would never hurt anybody. After that, Chiwa notices the little puppy plush that Rudo fixed up earlier, and Rudo tries to give it to her as a gift, cause he's got a little crush. But just as he tries to give the puppy to Chiwa, her mom shows up and takes her home. Rudo heads back home, where he's surprisingly not alone. Meet Recto, Rudo's adoptive father. He teases Rudo about the whole Chiwa situation thing, cause apparently he was watching and then addresses the whole trash raid situation. This is where we learn of something called the Pit. The Pit is some bottomless wasteland down below where they send the worst of the worst criminals. Although they don't know much about it, the people here are pretty much all agreed that being dropped down there is a death sentence. Upon taking off his gloves, Rudo reveals these weird marks on his hands that sort of resemble burn marks. Whatever they are, these marks caused Rudo constant agonizing pain and made him an outcast growing up. Obviously, this had an effect on Rudo's character, as he grew up dealing with both the physical and mental pain of his hands. This problem was mostly fixed when one day, Recto came along and gave Rudo his gloves. Although the gloves are pretty old and beaten up, they somehow helped Rudo with the pain and hid the marks, so he's pretty much worn them all the time since. Of course, this begs the question of how Rudo got these marks in the first place. And while we don't know much about how he got these marks, we do know that according to Rudo, these marks were given to him by his father. And by that, I mean his biological father, the psychotic murderer mentioned earlier, who was thrown down into the pit due to his crimes. After this segment finishes, the camera pans out to reveal this mysterious figure who's been observing them this whole time. Anyways, Rudo's watching the townspeople drop someone down to the pit, and Chiwa just randomly shows up out of nowhere. She tells Rudo to stop risking his life for trash, and then one thing leads to another, and...
Well, he was just there! And I was like, oh, Chiwa might really like you! But then, you might not since I got him from the dump. Still, even if you didn't like him, I figured he'd be happier with you than rotting away in a dark hole. So, yeah.
He's perfect. I'll love him always.
Rudo's too flustered to continue the interaction any further, so he just runs back home and he's about to brag to Recto about his insane riz. When... In a fit of rage, Ruto tries to fight the guy, and loses. Before leaving, the perpetrator picks up this book, and if you pay really close attention, you'll see this symbol on the cover of the book that looks almost identical to the symbol on Ruto's gloves. Recto is still bleeding out on the floor. In his final moments, he tells Ruto to run away and change the world, which he processes perfectly. That's all the time he gets though, since the apostles show up right behind him as he's hovering over Recto's dead body with his blood on him. Obviously, the apostles think Ruto's the one who murdered Recto, and despite his pleas, they charge him with his murder. That means he's gonna be dropped down into the pit. Ruto, justifiably, thinks this is all pretty messed up, and in his last moments before being dropped down, he looks into the crowd and sees that Chiwa is here. He tries to convince her to help him and that he's innocent, but surprise, surprise, she doesn't actually believe him.
I thought you were good. But you aren't. You're just the son of a killer.
This changes something in Ruto, and he goes kinda crazy, especially when he sees the same person who killed Recto is still here, standing in the middle of the crowd. And then, they drop him down. As he's falling, he swears that he'll come back one day and exact revenge on everyone, especially the one who killed Recto. Anyways, Ruto's landed down in the pit, and through some miracle, he's alive. The place he fell in is completely covered in trash, and it's basically just a huge landfill. Ruto doesn't get a lot of time to process it, however, as a few moments later, a giant trash beast rises up from behind along with a few smaller ones and starts chasing him. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the buildup of trash here has created toxic fumes, making it hard for him to breathe. In this life and death situation, Ruto remembers what happened to Recto and his desire for revenge, which is apparently enough motivation to lock in. Meanwhile, far out in the distance, this guy with an umbrella sees the commotion. Ruto keeps fighting the beasts, and although he looks like he's winning, he stands no chance against the bigger one in the back. Fortunately for Ruto, the umbrella guy shows up and literally kicks his ass. He's not here for trouble though, and actually gives Ruto a gas mask. Because of Ruto's loud mouth, a huge horde of trash beasts have surrounded them. Luckily, the umbrella guy is able to fight back. He transforms his umbrella into a weapon, kills all the trash beasts, and then floats back down. Meet Engine, who introduces himself as a cleaner, and then Ruto passes out. When he wakes up, he's being dragged along the road by Engine, and Ruto's obviously pissed off. He says that he has to get back to the city, but Engine explains that that's impossible. Apparently, the city, which is called the Sphere, is constantly moving. In addition, it's in the sky, and they have no way of getting him there. Despite all this, Ruto's still determined to get back, and demands information from Engine. In response to this, he throws him in front of a group of human traffickers. Rude, but at least he's still keeping an eye on him. The traffickers lock him up, and are especially excited because Ruto's a spherite, which is what they call people from the sphere, and I can only assume it's a slur. As it turns out, most people on the ground absolutely despise spherites, and this is due to the trash they throw down. The trash kills people when it crashes, it poisons the air and soil, and even the trash beasts we saw earlier are another byproduct of the sphere's garbage. Apparently, people hate spherites so much that they'll pay a hefty sum of money to see spherites get tortured. In addition, their body parts and even clothes sell for a ton of money. Ruto doesn't understand any of this, and honestly, he's just tired of people treating him poorly just because of a label. So, he bites the guy's fingers off.
Quit making up labels, so you can have a reason to treat people like garbage!
It's here that we're shown that Ruto is a giver. As Engine explains it, it's someone who can give life to objects to draw out their power. Ruto is especially unique because he can do this with multiple objects, while most givers can only do it with one. Ruto beats up all the traffickers pretty effortlessly before Engine shows up and gets him to calm down. Engine explains that he left him here just to confirm that Ruto has powers, which he does, and then offers Ruto all the information he needs if he joins the cleaners. Ruto, desperately wanting any information he can get on the ground or sphere, obviously rejects Engine's offer. Ruto doesn't want to get involved, but in reality, the cleaners are probably his only option. Engine reminds him that it's a pretty dangerous place here. The cleaners don't care whether or not he's from the sphere, but there's plenty of other people who do. Information's valuable on the ground too, so chances are Ruto isn't going to get the info he wants without paying some sort of a cost. And then they eat burgers. There's a lot about the ground that Ruto didn't know. He grew up believing that the ground was just some landfill, but now he's realized that there's actually civilization down here. Engine then goes on to explain the concept of anima. Essentially, anima is a type of energy formed by human emotion. High concentration of this energy results in the creation of trash beasts. In addition, anima can create objects called vital instruments, such as Engine's umbrella and Ruto's gloves. You'll learn that vital instruments are basically enhanced tools. In the case of people like Engine, their vital instruments are mostly used as weapons that can kill trash beasts. After that, Engine shifts towards the topic of the cleaners. The cleaners are a group of people who specialize in exterminating trash beasts. You don't necessarily need to be a giver Giver to join, but since they have the ability to kill trash beasts, they're vital to their cause. Ruto's incentivized to join for information, but Engine reveals that he actually has no clue on how to get back to the sphere, but his boss probably does. Engine leaves to run errands and gives Ruto some money to go do stuff with in the meantime, which gets promptly stolen by some random cat. Luckily, Ruto's able to catch the cat and get his money back with the help of this random stick he found. Unfortunately though, that wasn't just some random stick. Apparently, that stick is the vital instrument of Zanka Nijiku, a cleaner. Specifically, he's the cleaner that Engine has tasked with training Ruto. Zanka's pretty pissed that Ruto stole his instrument and starts a fight. In this crucial moment, Ruto has a sudden flashback to a talk Recto gave him about his anger issues, and I guess it just really resonated with Ruto right now. So he just apologizes to Zanka, and Zanka's actually pretty reasonable, so he calms down too. You'd think the problem's resolved now, but unfortunately, the peace does not last long.
Enough about me. What made you decide to join our band of weirdos?
I wouldn't say I joined. It's kinda more like I'm lending a hand until I get what I want from you guys.
Zanka describes the face as,
You look like you eat puppies for fun!
and so they resume the fight.
Impressive. But if you can't back it up, well, even against someone as basic as me, you're already dead.
Although Ruto's able to fight back a little, he's clearly no match for Zanka. He does have one saving grace though. The object he grabbed was a plunger, which is full of shit. Zanka is so repulsed by this that he runs from Ruto, and we get this Looney Tunes ass chase between Ruto and Zanka.
Time out! Time out! You! I called time out! At least quit swinging that thing around!
The chase eventually ends with the scene I always smile at, where Zanka gets covered in shit. Anyways, Engine finds them and laughs his ass off. He describes Zanka as the closest the ground gets to making a spoiled rich kid, so he's like the perfect target for this. Zanka's obviously embarrassed, but Engine says that he's like the best teacher they've got for Ruto, and you'll see that Zanka's a hell of an Engine fanboy, along with like, a third of the population.
Give me the name of a Mexican dish that ends with Ito. Dorito. What? Good answer, nephew.
After that, we're introduced to another member of the Cleaners, Rio, who's just been chilling in the back this whole time. Engine drives them over to the Cleaners' headquarters, and upon arrival, they meet Semiyu, the receptionist of the Cleaners and a giver. Her vital instrument is her glasses, which grant her a few useful abilities like the one she used on Ruto. This ability essentially lets her see a person's intent and their potential, which is especially helpful in scouting new recruits. She tells Engine a few things about Ruto that we could already infer, but leaves behind one crucial detail that she isn't revealing yet. After that, Engine takes Ruto to go meet the Cleaners' boss. He warns Ruto to keep his mouth shut before going to meet him though, since Ruto's pretty short-tempered. The plan is for Ruto to join the Cleaners and work for them in exchange for information. In addition, he advises Ruto not to ask any questions about the boss's vital instrument. Apparently, no one knows anything about the boss's vital instrument. The Cleaners follow him out of loyalty, so no one really cares. After that's all done, they open the door to finally meet the boss, and he's not even home. Semiyu tells them he's away on business, so until he's back, they can't really do anything. That's when Rio shows up and suggests that Ruto come along with her on a mission so he can see what they do. The mission they've been tasked with is to go and defend a town from some trash beasts who've been spotted approaching the area, and Semiyu explains that the town is near a polluted zone. The ground is divided into areas that are habitable and some that aren't, which are called polluted zones. Polluted zones are areas that are home to several trash beasts. In addition, they've built up so much garbage that the air has become toxic. There's also 6 confirmed polluted zones that are so dangerous they've been referred to as no man's land. And as it turns out, the place that Ruto initially landed in was actually one of these. Rio brings Ruto and a few other cleaners called supporters over to the mission area. Supporters are non-givers, and while they can't kill trash beasts themselves, they can still assist in their fights. Eventually, the trash beasts start approaching, and while Ruto starts freaking out, Rio stays calm. Instead, she just says that they should throw a party when they get back. The second Ruto starts to calm down, this giant trash beast shows up and busts down the wall, keeping the little guys out. So Rio finally starts fighting them using her vital instrument, which are these scissors. During the fight, one of the supporters almost gets killed, but Ruto's able to dive in last second and block the attack. While it initially holds off the trash beast, he isn't able to defeat it himself and needs Rio to come and save him. Speaking of Rio, she's actually having some trouble defeating the trash beast. Usually, she can just kill a trash beast like you would with a normal animal, but that's not working with this one who's regenerating itself. Eventually, the trash beast creates an earthquake, aimed straight for Ruto, and instead of getting out of the way, he just freezes up. He thinks that he's useless, and just a burden to the cleaners who have to come and save him each time. Luckily, he gets saved by another one of the supporters, who gives him a little pep talk about chasing his goals, while Rio finally finds the weak point on the trash beast. The trash beast is finally dead, dead, but it's not all good news. Engine explained earlier that Trash Beast's cores are made out of anima, but this Trash Beast wasn't powered by anima. Instead, it was powered by a vital instrument, and none of them understand how this is possible. At the end of the episode, we're shown a little glimpse of this guy, who captured one of the human traffickers from earlier, and he asks him for information on none other than Rudo. We're later shown that he does indeed get the information, and now he's coming after him. Anyways, remember that party Rio was talking about? Well, she wasn't kidding. They've got everything. Food, games, alcohol, but Rudo's still sulking in a corner. He's feeling down right now, cause he's still thinking about yesterday where he was useless and getting in the way of Rio and the rest of the supporters, Gris, Folo, and Tomei. This bothers him, because back in the sphere, there was a big cycle of Rudo getting into trouble, and it would become Regdo's problem. Despite what Rudo says, Gris doesn't care, and says that he still appreciates what Rudo's doing. There's a lot of people who see supporters in the same way that Rudo's describing himself, so Gris is appreciative of Rudo for recognizing their worth. After that, there's this really nice moment where Gris is basically Rudo's father figure. He talks to Rudo about how he should stop caring so much about what other people want and focus on chasing his own goals in life. And then Engine shows up and ruins everything. They watch this guy named Job graffiti the wall, and then they get assigned a new mission by Semiyu. She tells them that a merchant claims they were attacked by a trash beast who stole their cargo. It's important that the merchant gets their cargo back because their cargo is actually a live spherite, hence why Semiyu thought it would be good for Rudo to come along. On the way there, they talk about Gris's talisman, which he prays to before every mission. It's not a special talisman at all, but he still does it every single time, praying that everyone makes it home safely. And then skipping over this part because it's filler, they quickly discover that there's no spherite here and this whole thing is a trap. The ground collapses from underneath them and they fall into some sort of weird basement. Here, there's these weird people with purple lanterns which Zanka introduces as the Raiders. The Raiders are bandits who are usually just troublesome thieves, but have become a bigger problem lately as they've become more active and engaged in strange experiments. This is a problem because there's a handful of givers among the Raiders' ranks, and apparently they want Rudo for whatever reason. The cleaners don't take any chances with Rudo here, so he leaves along with the supporters while Zanka fights the two Raiders alone. While he initially struggles against the two, he quickly figures out their strategy and defeats them relatively easily. Everything would be fine if those were the only two Raiders here, but we find out immediately that that's not the case. Zanka quickly loses, and we see him paralyzed on the ground. The gang gets split up since Gris wanted to go back and check on Zanka, and that gives the Raider just enough time to catch up to them. Meet Jabber Wonger, a violent, sadistic, and dangerous raider. In addition, he's kind of crazy. Jabber just wants to grab Rudo and leave, but obviously the rest of the cleaners aren't gonna let that happen. Except it's really just the thought that matters, cause they can't stop Jabber at all, and Gris takes a fatal blow in the process. Witnessing this, Rudo gets a flashback to when he first gained his love for trash. Rudo was abandoned as a child, and that left him pretty emotionless growing up. To fix this, Recto tried to help Rudo find something that would cheer him up, but nothing really worked. That is until Rudo saw one of the rich people throwing out their garbage, and this really upsetted Rudo, who thought that all the trash they threw out was still good. After the flashback ends, Rudo locks in. His gloves give him the power to turn trash into vital instruments. In this case, he uses Gris's talisman to create this thing. I don't know what it is really. Anyways, the important part is that it proves to be pretty strong. It detects the intent of any attacker and uses it to dodge the blow. You'd think Rudo would win this fight pretty easily, but Jabber proves to be pretty resilient, and again, he's crazy. Jabber noticed that Rudo isn't able to dodge every attack. The talisman can only dodge attacks if it senses hostile intent. For example, Rudo didn't dodge when Jabber threw rubble at him here. Jabber reveals that his claws inject a strong venom when it makes contact. When others are injected with the venom, they immediately get paralyzed. However, Jabber is just built different. When he injects himself with the venom, he loses consciousness, but his body continues to instinctively fight, which is pretty bad for Rudo. If Jabber's actually just straight up lost his mind, then the talisman can't detect his intent, and therefore, Rudo can't dodge any of his attacks. Luckily, Zanka shows up just in time and ready for revenge on Jabber. After learning how Rudo's powers work, he's devised a plan. After sensing intent, Rudo can either dodge the attack or redirect the attacker. Zanka plans to exploit this ability. He suggests that he should try attacking Rudo so he can move him around to attack Jabber while avoiding his claws. They don't exactly have many options, so they go for it and it actually works. They beat Jabber to a pulp and the fight is seemingly over. After this, the talisman that Rudo was using crumples and turns to ashes. Rudo's pretty upset over this because the talisman belonged to Gris and he feels really bad for destroying it. He freezes up, both from the shock of the talisman and because, apparently, he was hit by Jabber's toxin. Speaking of Jabber, he's back up now. As it turns out, he's built up anti-venoms in his own body, making him partially immune to his own toxin. In addition, his other claw has a different type of toxin that can be administered to numb all the pain he feels. Jabber stabs Zanka again, grabs Rudo, and then runs off with him. Jabber pops back up to the surface, and he happens to notice that the area is very un-building shaped, which is pretty weird.
We were in a building just a second ago. Huh?
Found you.
As it turns out, Tomei and the rest of the supporters who got cut off were able to escape the basement and call for help, hence why Engine and the rest of the cleaners are here. They're about to confront Jabber when suddenly someone else pops up, Chthoni, another raider who's here to bring Jabber back. Jabber, being Jabber, initially resists because he wants to fight the cleaners, but Chthoni says,
"When I headed out, the boss was smiling."
Which is a pretty huge red flag in evil team bosses, and even Jabber understands that. He finally gives in and leaves, but not before delivering one of the greatest lines in the whole show.
Yo, Rudo, you got some pretty good game for a worn-out, foul-mouthed, butthurt, ratchety, short-stacked sphere, right?
Jabber's about to leave through Chthoni's magic manhole when he recognizes the pattern on Rudo's gloves. He gets really excited and talks about how he's familiar with a series of Rudo's gloves. He specifically says, "You've got an object from that series too?" implying that there's a raider with a vital instrument that's related to Rudo's. No one really understands what he meant by this, but the most important matter on their hands right now is Gris, who's near death. Rudo goes up to him and apologizes for destroying the talisman, but Gris does not care. He says that even though the talisman was important to him, Rudo was able to make full use of it, and that's even more important. No matter what Rudo thinks, Gris says he did a great job today. They made it back to Cleaner HQ, and Rudo's busy blaming himself for Gris's death. Despite all that he's accomplished, he still thinks that he isn't doing enough, and it's resulting in people getting hurt. But that's not even true! Gris is literally alive. Rudo got baited. Apparently, he would be dead, but there's actually a cleaner with healing powers, Aisha. Gris is fine and everyone calms down, and that's when this other character walks in, who we're introduced to as the boss of the cleaners, Arca Corvus. Initially, he was against letting Rudo join the cleaners since he was clearly just here for information. However, this decision has changed following the fight with Jabber. He now sees that Rudo's more than willing to fight for their cause, so congratulations, Rudo's officially a cleaner now. More importantly though, Arca is willing to give Rudo some information about how he could possibly get back to the sphere. He explains that crossing the border to the sphere is basically a death sentence. However, not all hope is lost. Arca's heard of a story of a traveler who was lost out in No Man's Land, specifically the one that's closest to the border, and they came across a strange woman living out there alone. Confused, the traveler asked the woman why she chose to live here, and she responded saying that it's so she can watch people falling down from the sphere. This is because in some rare cases, there will be people who can cross the sphere as they please. Hearing this, Rudo immediately tries to head out on his own, but he's eventually stopped by Follow and Engine. Engine explains that he and a whole bunch of other cleaners are coming on the trip with them, but they have to make preparations first. A lot of stuff happens that explains how the Gachiakuta world works, so I'll go over it quickly because the next arc is really interesting. Before Engine leaves, Rudo asks why raiders like Jabber are givers too. The TLDR is that morality plays no part in becoming a giver, so long as you take good care of your prized object. They decide it's best to figure out how Rudo's powers work, so they train him and make a few discoveries. Rudo can only transform trash into vital instruments because his powers work on repurposing thrown out objects. In addition, he can only do this 3 times before losing energy and passing out. Here Engine also explains the concept of an object's quality. Essentially, the longer you take care of an object, the higher quality it becomes and the more power it has. This is exactly why Rudo's gloves are so strong. He's been taking care of them for years, so they're of extremely high quality. They also explain that when Rudo's finished using an object, it disintegrates because it's finished serving its purpose, not because of anything that Rudo does. Lastly, they suggest that Rudo give his gloves a name. Apparently, everyone else has a name for their vital instruments. Engine's is called Unbreaker, Ryo's is called the Ripper, and Zanka's is my personal favorite, Lovely Assist Staff. We later learned that Rudo decided on the name 3R after the principle of reduce, reuse, recycle. Around this time, we get a glimpse of this guy, who's the Raiders' boss. We also learn that Rudo's gloves and his coat are part of the Watchmen series. In addition, he sends Jabber over to the desert no man's land, Penta, which is the same place that the cleaners are headed. Speaking of the cleaners, they're continuing with their preparations. They head over to Canvas Town, a city of art, banger soundtracks, and a dead guy. Remember Job? Well, he's dead. The mayor of Canvas Town tells them that he died due to body pollution since he was always traveling to polluted zones without a mask on. In addition, we learn that Job was the Canvas Town spellcaster, who's basically like the Lorax. It's an important role that's been passed down to this kid named Remlin. Part of the job is this pen, which is a vital instrument that's unique because it can be inherited. Everyone's depressed because Job died, but Remlin's finally cheered up and we get this cool fireworks show. In addition, Remlin gives the cleaners a spell using the pen that allows them to sustain a blow that would regularly be fatal. This spell is actually why they came to Canvas Town in the first place, and with this past them, they finally travel to Penta. They fight some trash beasts who aren't very strong, but it causes a big enough commotion to attract the attention of this girl. And finally, we start the Lady of Penta art. The girl introduces herself as Amo. It's also worth noting that she talks in the third person and acts very childish. They quickly find out that Amo is who they've been searching for this whole time, but they're still pretty skeptical about approaching her. She invites them over to her home, which is in Penta, and they decide to go since they clearly outnumber her. That being said, 5 seconds later in a flash forward scene, Enchi gets knocked out and falls over. Apparently, what happened before the scene is that Amo asked all of them to take off their masks, and after that, they tried to ask Amo questions about the border, but she just straight up ignores all of their questions. Instead, she goes off about how much she likes people's scent, which is like, Okay, but the cleaners are here for information. Enjin decides to take one for the team and asks her for information again, and Amo just goes crazy. She starts talking about how everyone who visits her just wants to use her. So like, we might be the bad guys. Enjin, being the genius he is, tries his best to de-escalate the situation, but it clearly does not go very well.
How about I try and rephrase? Hey girl, how you doing?
Amo, understandably, just gets even more angry, and we find out that not only is she a giver, but she's a giver with an instrument that's part of the Watchmen series. Amo has some very unique powers, and it works through scent, which is why she asked them to take off their masks. She can use scents to manipulate people's perceptions and force them to remember memories with loved ones, and this applies even to those who've died. By doing this, she's able to control several cleaners who are tricked into thinking that Amo is an important person to them. We don't see everyone's memories, but in Delmon's case, it was his wife, and for Rudo, it was Chiwa, who he still has mixed opinions on, but nevertheless, he still defends her. The rest of the cleaners catch on to the whole scent thing and put their masks back on, but they do so far too late. Gris and Tomei tend to Enjin's injuries, while Zanka and Tamsi fight the rest of the cleaners. Although they're outnumbered, Tamsi reveals his vital instrument, which is a yarn winder, and it proves very effective against crowds. It's not strong enough to hold them forever though, and Tamsi thinks of the only rational course of action, and that is to turn the ball of yarn keeping everyone together into a giant drill and crash it through the entire tower they're in. Gris, Tomei, Enjin, and Amo were able to avoid the fall, but everyone else crashed pretty hard. Zanka yells at Tamsi, saying he was careless and even thinks he might have turned evil. But then Tamsi reminds him about the protection spell they got from Remlin, and he's just like, oh yeah, that did happen. In addition, it's revealed that Enjin was actually just pretending to be unconscious, and he wakes up and grabs Amo's boots. Everyone's alive and Amo's been disarmed, so everything's fine, right? Well, not really. All of the people who are controlled wake up to reality and are forced to relive the pain of losing their loved ones all over again. Whether or not it was intentional from Amo, they're still suffering from the mental damages. Since everyone's got their masks back on, they decide to give Amo her boots back. With that out of the way, they have to decide on what to do with her. They can't just leave her here with her boots, but they also refuse to take them away. During all of this, Amo just complains about how ugly her house looks, and that annoys a few of the cleaners, especially Rudo. He walks up to Amo and just beats the shit out of her while she doesn't even fight back at all. He only stops once the rest of the cleaners pry him off, and then they try to get him to calm down. Around this time, we also learn of what Semu saw in Rudo back when they first met in a conversation she has with Arca. Semu describes it as a curse, but essentially there's some sort of bottled up hatred inside of Rudo that takes over at times such as right now. Rudo continues to be mad, saying that they shouldn't let Amo off so easily after she almost killed them, and he only calms down after Enjin reminds him that they still need information from Amo. Enjin takes Rudo away to talk to him, and he's surprised when Enjin isn't yelling at him, since that's what usually happens back in the sphere. Rudo explained that back in the sphere, whenever something upsetted him, he never expressed his emotions and instead just kept holding it in. When he reached the ground though, something changed. He realized he couldn't keep living like this and started opening up to others about his emotions in order to control it. Rudo thought that was it and he was healed, but as we see here, he's still got a long way to go.
I like hot chicks. Like really hot chicks.
Enjin explains that he struggles with understanding the needs of others and that it's a personal fault of his. It's caused him a lot of trouble, especially in his relationships. Despite the fact that he hasn't fully gotten over his flaws, he's grown enough to be able to acknowledge it. People make mistakes all the time, and in most cases, it's okay so long as you grow from it. Acknowledging that there's a problem is the first step in resolving it. So he tells Rudo that even though he thinks nothing's changed, he's able to recognize his faults, and that means he's improving. After that, they go back inside to apologize to Amo. Speaking of Amo, Tomei's patched her up and has a little conversation with Amo. She mentions a few things, like her mom, how she got her boots, and even an angel who she's seen crossing the border. At first, the rest of them skip over it, but then they catch on like that one Leonardo DiCaprio meme. Despite all the troubles they went through, they're finally able to confirm that Amo knows something about crossing the border. And that's the end of Cour 1. Want to find out more about Amo? Want to learn what the Raiders are planning? Want to see more of the cleaners' weird antics? Well, regardless of your answer, watch the rest of it. In case it wasn't obvious, Season 1's been out for a long time. And even if you don't want to watch it, you can read it. Between when I finished the show and the release of this video, I've already caught up to date on the manga, and it's pretty damn good. Enough of that though, I wanted to talk about this video. Originally, this was supposed to come out in like late March or early April, and well, yeah, it was a little late. In addition, I was going to cover the entirety of Season 1 and not just Cour 1, But of course, that didn't happen either. Sometime during the making of this, I realized that I was just not going to be able to finish this video on time. And even if I did, it wouldn't even come out that well. So I decided to cut out Gachiakuta entirely. I apologize if you wanted to see that, but it was just going to take way too long, plus I have a lot of exams coming up, so I decided to just get this video out now. Otherwise, it would just get delayed for like another month, and no one wants that. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy making these summary videos, but at the same time, they take so long, so chances are I won't be doing these too often. They're not cancelled, but they're certainly not going to be a priority for me. I think I've talked enough though, so TLDR, Gachiakuta is great. Thank you to all parties involved in its creation. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope it made your day just a little bit better. Thank you. And until next time, goodbye.